Isabel's heels clicked against Marcello's marble floors, each step a countdown to justice. Through the golden glow of pendant lights and the soft murmur of Denver's elite dining, she saw him, Ethan Castellano, checking his Patek Philippe watch for the third time in 5 minutes, nervous energy radiating off his tailored burgundy suit. She smiled. Not the broken smile she'd practiced in mirrors for 2 years. The smile of a woman who'd finally found her target. Voiceover. 2 years ago, the man sitting at table 7 destroyed my eye in 30 seconds of rage. Tonight, I'm taking everything he built in 30 years. The hostess gestured toward his table, and Isabel adjusted her hair, the carefully styled waves that concealed the clouded iris of her left eye. The eye that no longer saw color or light or hope. Just permanent gray fog, a constant reminder of the morning Ethan Castellano chose profit over preservation, power over people, and shoved her into exposed rebar because she stood between him and a demolition deadline. His jawline could cut glass, but his eyes betrayed the same desperation she recognized from her own mirror. The look of someone drowning who'd just spotted a life raft. She was that life raft. And she was full of holes. 2 years ago. Her architecture firm's glass conference room. Her presentation slide. Morrison Building Historic Preservation Proposal. The partners nodding. Partnership track, 3 months away. Ethan's demolition crew arriving at dawn, 4 hours early. His face twisted in fury. Progress doesn't wait for sentimental idealists. His hand on her shoulder. The shove. The fall. Metal piercing her eye socket. Her scream swallowed by construction noise. Blood pooling on concrete. Settlement check for $847,000. Her lawyer. Take it. They'll bury you in litigation. Her career buried instead. Present day. 3 hours earlier. Isabel's studio apartment. 3 alarm clocks for 3 jobs. Her sister Valentina's hands steady with makeup brushes, trying to minimize the blind eye's cloudiness. Last profile Izzy, Valentina had whispered, her own eyes wet. After tonight, we delete everything. You deserve love, even broken. But Isabel hadn't been looking for love. She'd been looking for him. Before we continue, comment revenge if you think she should destroy him, or redemption if he deserves a second chance. And subscribe, because what happens next will tear your heart out and make you question everything you believe about guilt, justice, and the thin line between the two. Ethan Castellano stood as Isabel approached, and for one suspended moment, she wondered if he'd recognize the woman whose life he'd obliterated. His hand extended across the white linen tablecloth. Confident, warm, the hand of a man who'd never faced consequences. Isabel Martinez? The question mark at the end of her name was a knife she'd sharpen later. He didn't know her. 2 years of suffering, and she was just another profile picture. Another desperate woman willing to meet a stranger for dinner because loneliness hurt worse than pride. Ethan. She placed her hand in his, feeling the same calluses that had gripped her shoulder before throwing her into oblivion. His palm was warm. His smile was practiced. Nothing about him suggested he remembered destroying someone's entire future on a Tuesday morning in October. She sat down and he followed, his movements betraying exhaustion that money couldn't fix. His dating profile had mentioned a daughter. 7 years old, nightmares, selective mutism since her mother's death. Isabel had memorized every detail the way generals memorized enemy positions. I have to admit, Ethan said, his voice carrying the weight of confession. I almost canceled tonight. My daughter's having a rough week, and leaving her with my mother felt like abandoning her again. He stopped himself, laughing nervously. God, I'm sorry. That's a terrible opening. Hi, I'm Ethan, and I'm a mess. Isabel's blind eye throbbed with phantom pain. The clouded iris caught the candlelight wrong, and she watched him notice, his gaze flickering to her left eye for just a second before snapping back to her right, that good eye that still worked, still saw, still wept. Don't apologize, she said, her voice steady as surgery. Honestly is underrated on first dates. Then I'll be honest. He leaned forward, and something in his expression cracked open. Vulnerability she hadn't expected. Pain she recognized. I'm not good at this. The whole dating thing. My late wife was my college sweetheart. We were together 15 years before cancer took her. Starting over at 40 feels like learning to breathe underwater. Isabel's revenge script didn't account for this. The raw grief in his voice, the way his hands trembled slightly when he mentioned his daughter. She'd prepared for arrogance. For the monster who'd shoved her without looking back. Not for this broken man who looked like he was drowning. You look familiar, Ethan said suddenly, his brow furrowing. Have we met before? Isabel's pulse spiked. She leaned forward, her smile sharpening into something surgical. I don't think so, Ethan. She paused, letting the silence stretch until his discomfort became palpable. But maybe you've seen me in your nightmares. His face drained of color. Ethan's wine glass slipped from his fingers. It didn't shatter, the linen caught it, but red spread across white like blood on concrete, and Isabel watched him relive something she couldn't see but could feel radiating off him in waves. Excuse me. His voice fractured. He stood too quickly, his chair scraping marble, and stumbled toward the bathroom like a man trying to outrun his own skin. Isabel sat motionless, her pulse hammering against her ribs. This wasn't the script. He was supposed to be smooth, arrogant, untouchable. Not whatever this was. Hand shaking, face drained of color, movements sharp with panic. Through her good eye, she watched other diners return to their conversations, the moment already forgotten. Through her blind eye, she saw nothing but the permanent gray fog that had become her constant companion. 2 years ago, Ethan's perspective. His lawyer's voice through the phone. Settlement signed, Mr. Castellano. Woman's recovering. Move on, sir. Ethan at his desk, pen hovering over the check. $847,000. He never asked her name. Never saw the medical report. Just signed and buried it under 100 other deals, another line item in the cost of doing business. The guilt lasted 3 days. Then a merger demanded his attention, and he convinced himself everyone was fine. Present. He returned to the table 7 minutes later. His collar was damp where he'd splashed water on his face, and he couldn't meet her gaze. Kept his eyes fixed on the wine stain spreading between them like an accusation. Isabel. Her name came out rough. I need to tell you something that will make you leave. Her revenge plan accelerated, firing synapses she'd rehearsed for months. This was it, the confession, the vulnerability, the moment she'd twist the knife. But his raw guilt surprised her. She'd expected arrogance, defense, corporate doublespeak. Not this broken man building a confession in his throat he might actually mean. Before he could speak, his phone erupted. Not a ring, an explosion of vibrations. Text after text lighting up the screen face down on the table. His hand shot out, flipped it over, and Isabel watched his face crumble in real time. It's my daughter. His voice disappeared into something animal. Sophia. She's at Denver Children's Hospital. I have to. He was already moving, throwing a handful of cash on the table without counting it. His limp suddenly visible as adrenaline overrode whatever usually kept it hidden. Isabel watched him sprint through Marcello's pristine dining room, watched the hostess jump back as he shoved through the door, watched the burgundy suit disappear into Denver's October night. She sat frozen. This wasn't the plan. Her phone buzzed. Valentina. How's the revenge date going? Skull. Isabel stared at the abandoned wine glass, his jacket still draped over the chair back. She could walk away. Should walk away. This was the perfect exit. Him in crisis, her untouched. Clean escape. But something in his eyes when he'd said my daughter. She grabbed her purse and followed. The hospital parking lot smelled like exhaust and desperation. Isabel found him collapsed against his Bentley, hands covering his face, shoulders shaking with sobs that sounded like they were being torn from somewhere vital. She tried to hurt herself. The words came out broken. 7 years old and she tried to. He didn't finish. Couldn't finish. Isabel's hand hovered over his shoulder, trembling between comfort and retribution. 2 years of rage colliding with a child's pain she hadn't anticipated. A daughter who was collateral damage in a war she didn't start. Her fingers were an inch from his jacket when he looked up, and in his eyes she saw her own reflection. Someone drowning who just realized the life raft was full of holes. What would you do in Isabel's position? Comment your truth below. Subscribe now, because the next chapter reveals what's really wrong with Sophia, and it will break you. Isabel's hand touched his shoulder. Not comfort. Not retribution. Something in between that had no name. Come on, she heard herself say. Let's go inside. The pediatric emergency wing at Denver Children's Hospital smelled like antiseptic and broken families. Fluorescent lights turned everything corpse gray except the cheerful murals. Cartoon animals that mocked the reality of what brought children here. Isabel sat beside Ethan in the waiting room, their knees almost touching on plastic chairs designed for discomfort. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. She counted the tremors the way she used to count heartbeats in the weeks after her accident, when staying conscious felt like a choice she had to keep making. She hasn't spoken since her mother died 3 years ago. His voice was hollow, scraped clean of everything but truth. Tonight she wrote a note and left it on her nightstand. My mother found it when she went to check on her. He pulled out his phone with trembling fingers, showed Isabel a photo of careful 7-year-old handwriting on Disney Princess stationery. I want to be with Mommy. Isabel's revenge melted into something more complex. She recognized this pain, the kind that makes you want to disappear, that turns your own existence into a burden too heavy to carry. The cuts aren't deep, Ethan continued. Superficial, the doctor said. But deliberate. She knew what she was doing. The words hung between them like a noose. When they finally let him see her, Isabel stayed behind. This wasn't her place. She was just the woman from the blind date, the stranger with one functioning eye and a heart full of plans for destruction. But then Sophia woke, saw Isabel standing in the doorway behind her father, and whispered her first words in months. You have kind eyes. She was looking at Isabel's good eye. The right one. The one that still worked. The phrase destroyed Isabel's carefully constructed hatred. Demolished it the way Ethan's demolition crew had destroyed the Morrison building. Fast, efficient, leaving nothing but rubble. This child was collateral damage in a war she didn't start. 3 days later, the knock on Isabel's apartment door came at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. She knew who it was before she checked the peephole. Had been half expecting this, half dreading it. Ethan Castellano looked like he'd aged a decade since Saturday. Dark circles carved valleys under his eyes. His shirt was wrinkled, probably slept in. Desperation radiated off him like heat off summer asphalt. I'm sorry to show up unannounced. His voice was raw. I need to ask you something impossible. Isabel leaned against her doorframe, blocking entry. I'm listening. I need a wife in 27 days or I lose a $4.7 billion contract with Sheikh Rahman Al Faisal. The words came out mechanical, rehearsed. He's traditional. Believes marriage equals stability, that a man who can't manage a family can't manage a kingdom's infrastructure project. Sophia connected with you at the hospital. I felt. He stopped himself, jaw clenching around whatever confession almost escaped. I'll pay you $500,000 for 1 year. Contract marriage. You walk away wealthy. I keep my company. Sophia gets. He couldn't finish. They both knew what Sophia got. Someone who made her speak again after 3 years of silence. Isabel's apartment felt too small suddenly. Valentina's voice echoed from yesterday's phone call. This is perfect. Marry him, destroy him from inside, take the money. But Isabel couldn't stop staring at the drawing Sophia had given her at the hospital. Crayon sketch of a woman with wavy hair and one glowing eye, labeled Angel in careful letters. The revenge she'd planned felt heavier now, tangled with a mute child's hope. I'll marry you, Isabel said, watching his face flood with relief. But I have one condition. Anything. You tell me about the construction accident you mentioned at dinner. Every detail. Who you hurt. How you justified it. Ethan's face went ashen. His hand found the doorframe for support. After the wedding, he whispered. I promise. He doesn't know she knows. Drop a I if you see where this is going. Subscribe, because the wedding scene will shatter everything you think you understand about guilt and justice. The Denver County Courthouse smelled like old paper and new beginnings that rarely lasted. Isabel stood in a borrowed cream dress, Valentina's, because buying a wedding dress for a revenge plot felt like tempting fate, and watched Sophia scatter rose petals with the seriousness of a child performing surgery. The 7-year-old wore a lavender dress and hadn't stopped smiling since Isabel said yes. That smile was a weapon Isabel hadn't prepared for. Ethan's business partner Griffin stood as witness, his expression carefully neutral. The judge was a woman in her 60s who'd probably seen 1,000 desperate unions and knew better than to ask questions. Do you, Ethan James Castellano, take Isabel Maria Martinez? As Ethan reached for her hand to slide on the simple gold band, Isabel saw it. A jagged scar bisecting his right palm, thick and raised, the kind that came from something sharp and unforgiving. She grabbed his wrist mid-ceremony. Where's this from? The judge paused. Griffin shifted uncomfortably. Sophia's smile faltered. Ethan's voice dropped to barely audible. Construction site. 2 years ago. The worst day of my life. Isabel's blind eye throbbed with phantom pain. The gray fog seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She released his hand, and the ceremony continued, but the words sounded like they were coming from underwater. Ethan's mansion in Cherry Creek felt like a museum built to house ghosts. Marble floors that echoed footsteps. 12-foot ceilings that swallowed sound. Art on walls that nobody really looked at. Sophia clung to Isabel from the moment they crossed the threshold. Slept in her room the first 3 nights, curled against Isabel's side like she was afraid morning might make her new mother disappear. Isabel discovered the child's drawings scattered across her bedroom floor, crayons and markers depicting the same nightmare on repeat. Monsters with too many teeth chasing a little girl who couldn't run fast enough. In every picture, the girl was falling. She draws it every night, Ethan had explained quietly, standing in the doorway. Her therapist says it's how she processes her mother's death. The feeling of everyone leaving. On the 4th day, Isabel went looking for printer paper in Ethan's home office. The room was obsessively organized, everything labeled, filed, categorized. That's when she found the box. Banker's box. Bottom shelf. Label in black marker. Martinez settlement. Sealed. Her hands shook as she pulled it down. Inside, newspaper clippings about the accident, medical records she'd never authorized anyone to see, photos of her old architecture firm, and a leather journal worn soft from constant handling. She opened to page 1. Ethan's handwriting, barely legible. I destroyed an innocent woman today. I don't know how to live with this. 150 pages of guilt. Therapy session notes. Timestamps from suicide hotline calls. A photo of Isabel from before, smiling at a design conference, both eyes clear and bright, with her face circled in red ink and find her written in desperate scrawl across the margin. He'd been searching for her for 2 years. The dating profile wasn't coincidence. He'd found her and orchestrated everything. I can explain. Isabel spun. Ethan stood in the doorway, face drained of color, hands raised like she was pointing a gun instead of holding his journal. Her voice came out ice. You knew who I was from the beginning. This whole thing, Sophia, the proposal, the marriage, it's all manipulation. No. He stepped forward, stopped when she flinched. The contract is real. Sheikh Rahman is real. Sophia's connection to you is real. But yes, I knew. I've known since the moment I saw your profile. His voice cracked. And I fell in love with you anyway. Is he a stalker or genuinely guilty? Drop your verdict in the comments. Subscribe before the next chapter. Because what Isabel does next will change everything you think you know about revenge. The journal fell from Isabel's hands, pages scattering across imported hardwood like evidence at a crime scene. You took my eye. Her voice started quiet, the kind of quiet that precedes earthquakes. You took my career. I was 3 months from making partner at Colorado's top architecture firm. I had a TED Talk scheduled at the Denver Convention Center. I was designing the city's new cultural center. My design, my vision, and you erased my entire future in the time it takes to microwave popcorn. Her blind eye leaked involuntary tears. The damaged tear ducts never healed right after the surgery. Just another thing that didn't work anymore, another system broken beyond repair. Ethan didn't move. Didn't defend himself. Just stood there absorbing her rage like he'd been waiting 2 years for permission to feel it. "I've paid your rent for 18 months, he said finally, voice scraped raw. "Through a shell account. Your sister's lupus treatments. That anonymous donor, covering her biologics? That was me. I hired private investigators to make sure you were safe, eating, surviving. I built the Architectural Heritage Foundation in your name. It saved 14 historic buildings across Colorado. Employed 12 architects. Your design principles, your vision." Isabel's hands were shaking. "You think? I know none of this fixes what I took." His voice cracked. "I know I'm a coward for not facing you directly until I had leverage through Sophia and the contract. I know building monuments to my guilt doesn't give you back your eye or your partnership or the life you should have had." "Why Sophia?" The question came out jagged. "Why use your daughter as bait?" Ethan collapsed against the desk like someone had cut his strings. "I'm not using her. She stopped talking after my nightmares about you started. Every night the same dream, your scream, the blood, me running away. I'd wake up screaming, and Sophia would be standing in my doorway, watching me fall apart. My therapist thinks she absorbed my guilt, internalized that something was fundamentally broken about me." He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "When she spoke to you at the hospital, it was the first time she'd felt safe in 3 years. The first time she saw me as something other than a man destroying himself. I'm a selfish bastard, but I won't use my daughter. If you leave, I'll tell her the truth, that I'm the reason you're going, that I drove you away like I drive everyone away." Isabel stood frozen, mind calculating with the precision she used to apply to architectural renderings. She held all the cards now. One call to Sheikh Rahman exposing the truth ends Ethan's $4.7 billion contract. One custody report documenting his mental instability, the nightmares, the guilt spiral. Colorado family courts would take Sophia away in a heartbeat. One press release about the settlement breach, the stalking, the manipulation. His reputation would be ash by morning. She had the power to destroy him completely. Her mouth opened to deliver the killing blow. "Please don't go." The small voice came from the doorway. Sophia stood in her pajamas, the ones with dinosaurs Isabel had bought her last week. Tears streaming down her face, clutching the crayon drawing of the angel with one glowing eye. "Daddy's broken, but you fix him." Sophia's voice shook. "You fix me." Isabel's knees buckled. She grabbed the desk edge to stay upright, her blind eye blurring with tears that had nowhere to go. The little girl took a step forward. "Please." Should Isabel stay or destroy him? The comments are split 50-50ths. Drop your final answer below. Subscribe, because what happens next will redefine everything you thought you knew about justice. Isabel crossed the room in 3 steps and knelt in front of Sophia. "Eye level. The way you approach something fragile. I'm not leaving." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "But I'm not your father's wife. I'm your—" The word mother stuck in her throat like a bone. "I'm your person. Your dad and I. We're strangers living in the same house until I decide what justice looks like." Sophia's small arms wrapped around her neck, and Isabel let herself be held by a 7-year-old who'd already survived too much loss. Over the child's shoulder she met Ethan's eyes. Separate bedrooms. Co-parenting only. No discussion of feelings. "Whatever you need," he whispered. 6 weeks later, they'd achieved something resembling peace. Fragile as spun glass, but peace nonetheless. Sophia was talking in full sentences now. The nightmares had reduced from every night to twice a week. She'd started drawing different things. Flowers, houses. Isabel teaching her to sketch architectural elevations. Isabel spent mornings redesigning Ethan's Foundation's community center. Pro bono. For the kids who'd use it, not for him. She worked at the kitchen table while Sophia did homework beside her, and Ethan kept his distance, watching them like witnessing a miracle he didn't deserve. They were strangers who shared a child and a house and a history neither could escape. Then the call came. "There's been an accident at the Larimer Street site." Griffin's voice through Isabel's phone, tight with controlled panic. Ethan's en route to Denver Health. Steel beam fell during inspection. Isabel's hands went numb. Sophia was already grabbing her backpack, 7 years old and too familiar with hospital emergency rooms. The doctor's words in the surgical waiting room felt like déjà vu written in reverse. Significant mobility impairment. The beam crushed his right leg, the same one with previous injury. We've done what we can, but he'll need assistance walking. Possibly a cane permanently. Could be a wheelchair for longer distances. Isabel stared at the white wall, seeing her own nightmare reflected back in medical terminology. Ethan, who'd destroyed her mobility through his recklessness, now faced the same fate. The universe's justice felt cruel rather than satisfying. Beside her, Sophia was hysterical. Not Daddy too. Everyone leaves. Everyone breaks and leaves. The little girl's words hit like the steel beam that had just rewritten Ethan's future. Isabel pulled her close, feeling the child shake with the kind of terror that came from watching every adult in her life crumble. When they finally let Isabel into recovery, Ethan was emerging from anesthesia, eyes unfocused, leg immobilized in a complicated brace that looked like medieval torture repurposed for medicine. He saw her. Recognition sharpened through the drug haze. I deserve this. His voice was slurred but certain. Don't let Sophia see me like this. Tell her I'm on a business trip. Tell her. No. Isabel's response shocked them both. She moved closer to his bedside, her voice carrying the weight of 2 years spent learning to survive a broken body. She's going to learn that people survive broken bodies. She's going to learn that damage doesn't mean disappeared. She touched the brace on his leg. Cold metal, unforgiving. I'm proof. Ethan's eyes filled with tears that had nowhere to go but down. 2 people with mobility issues. 1 child. 1 impossible choice. What happens when the victim becomes the caretaker? Subscribe now. The next chapter will destroy you in the best possible way. The physical therapy sessions were brutal to witness. Ethan struggled with crutches like they were instruments of torture designed specifically to humiliate him. He hated the wheelchair the hospital provided, refused to sit in it unless absolutely necessary, would rather lean against walls in visible pain than accept what his body had become. Isabel watched him cycle through the same rage she'd felt at 17. Different accident, same loss. The fury at a body that no longer obeyed, at a world suddenly full of obstacles that didn't exist before, at the pity in strangers' eyes. She didn't coddle him. You're not special. Her voice cut through his latest outburst at a physical therapist who'd suggested he practice wheelchair transfers. Millions of people navigate life with mobility aids. Stop mourning who you were and figure out who you are now. Ethan stared at her like she'd slapped him. Good. She'd needed someone to slap her awake too, back when disability felt like a death sentence instead of just a different way of being alive. 4 weeks into recovery, Sheikh Rahman Al Faisal arrived unannounced. His investigator team had been thorough. Mr. Castellano. Rahman's voice carried the weight of empires. This marriage is a fraud built on a crime. You manipulated this victim into saving your contract. My investigators uncovered everything. The accident, the settlement, Ms. Martinez's real identity. He turned to Isabel, his expression softening. You deserve better than this predator's machinations. The deal is off. I don't do business with men who build fortunes on other people's broken bodies. Ethan didn't defend himself. Just nodded slowly, accepting the execution. You're right. His voice was hollow. Keep your money. He turned to Isabel, eyes red-rimmed. I'm giving you 49% of my company. The foundation becomes fully yours. The house, the assets, take everything. I'll move out with Sophia. You've earned your revenge. He was crying, broken in ways the wheelchair beside him couldn't begin to explain. Mommy, don't let Daddy leave. Sophia's voice shattered the moment. She ran into the room, tears streaming, launching herself at Isabel. The word mommy, first time she'd said it, hit harder than any steel beam. You both have wheels now, Sophia sobbed. We can be the rolling family. Please don't make him go. The child's innocence cracked Isabel's last defense. She looked at Ethan, genuinely destroyed, offering her everything he'd built, everything he had. Then at Sheikh Rahman, who watched with the careful neutrality of a man reconsidering his judgment. The contract's back on. Isabel's voice was steady. I'm staying. Why? Rahman's eyebrows rose. Why would you save him? Isabel touched her blind eye, the clouded iris that no longer saw light or color or hope, just permanent gray fog. I'm not saving him. I'm choosing me. This I. She held Rahman's gaze. It's proof I'm unbreakable. And I'm done letting what he did define who I get to become. The final chapter reveals Isabel's real plan. And it's not what you think. Comment. Is this forgiveness or something darker? Subscribe now. You've come this far. Don't miss the ending. Isabel turned to Ethan, her voice carrying the kind of steel that came from surviving 2 years of people treating her like she was broken. I'm staying as your equal, not your victim. You'll make me partner in the construction company, with final say on all projects. The foundation answers to me. Every decision, every dollar, every building we save or tear down. She leaned closer, close enough to see her reflection in his devastated eyes. And Ethan, you'll spend every day earning something you can't buy or manipulate. My respect. It might take 1 year. It might take forever. Deal. No hesitation. No negotiation. Sheikh Rahman watched this exchange with the expression of a man witnessing something he didn't fully understand but recognized as authentic. He extended his hand to Isabel. Then we have a contract, Ms. Martinez. I look forward to seeing what you build. 6 months later, Isabel was leading Castellano Construction's complete shift to sustainable development. Historic preservation instead of demolition. Green building practices. Hiring architects whose careers had been derailed by disability or circumstance. Giving them the second chances she never got. Ethan had learned to walk with a cane, the limp now permanent but manageable. He volunteered at disability advocacy groups, speaking about the humility that came from losing the body you took for granted. He was quieter now, more careful with his power. Sophia was thriving, talking in full sentences, painting elaborate landscapes, calling Isabel mom and Ethan daddy without differentiating between biology and choice. You fell for him. Valentina's voice cut through Isabel's thoughts as they sat in her sister's kitchen, watching Sophia play in the backyard through the window. Isabel didn't deny it. I fell for the man his guilt forced him to become, not who he was. There's a difference. All the difference. Sophia's 8th birthday party filled the Cherry Creek mansion with the chaos of children and cake. She demanded an eye patch like Mommy's. Pirates are cool. And Isabel helped her fashion one from purple felt and elastic. Ethan watched from the doorway, still limping slightly even with the cane. His burgundy jacket from their first date now hanging looser on a body that had learned what fragility meant. He caught Isabel's eye across the room. Mouthed. Thank you. She mouthed back. Don't waste it. Voiceover. Isabel's voice. They say revenge is best served cold. But I learned something hotter. Taking back your power from the person who stole it. Ethan took my eye, my career, my old life. The version of Isabel Martinez who was 3 months from making partner, who had a TED Talk scheduled, who designed with both eyes clear and bright. But I took something he can never reclaim. His guilt, his company, his daughter's love, his carefully constructed empire built on other people's suffering. And I turned them into mine. Not forgiveness. Forgiveness suggests he earned absolution. Not revenge. Revenge suggests I'm still defined by what he took. Justice. On my terms. Built from the wreckage of what he destroyed. This blind eye. It's not proof I'm broken. It's proof I'm unbreakable. Did Isabel make the right choice? Comment your truth below. And subscribe, because we tell stories that refuse to let damage define destiny. Stories where survival isn't the ending. It's the beginning.